right. So what was your take on Informatica?
Yeah, so my bias here, I was at Informatica World. My travel was paid for. Kind of the typical analyst deal. I've worked with Informatica in the past. Actually, I've worked with all four of these companies in the past. So I guess I'm equally biased. But from the Informatica perspective, I thought it was a very workmanlike announcement. There was an AI engineering service that was announced with the express purpose of managing multi-agent systems. So really focusing on how these agents are going to talk to each other, not necessarily the best solution for creating agents from scratch, although there is going to be, this is much more focused on discovering agents and then being able to have them connect to each other. And there's going to be probably some code writing capabilities because that's kind of Informatica's bread and butter, right? Connecting things together and then having the interstitial code and queries to make sure that things work. And then Informatica announced a number of agents that are both in preview and then in process. So the ones that are most closest to market are around data quality, data discovery, data lineage. And then there's a bunch of other products that I'm pretty sure will come out by the end of the year, but including an ELT agent, extract, load, transfer, improving your master data management, taxonomies and hierarchies, so serving as a modernization solution to go from the on-prem to a cloud environment. There are going to be agents to help with those things as well. But you notice as I'm saying all this stuff, this is nuts and bolts data stuff. They are not going to say that they're going to do more than that. They are sticking to their core area.
And I think that makes sense. I mean, I think the challenge with a company like Informatica is they've got this very broad, diverse customer base, and they have a whole lot of needs they have to cater to.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to cover their bases. And I think as a result, they're kind of sticking close to the knitting, which I don't think is a bad thing in general. And to your point, I think it's the devil's going to be in the details. It is interesting that these are, for the most part, not even going to be available in preview until the fall. So, this is still very much a work in progress thing. So, this was to me probably, it was difficult to get overly excited about it. I do think it speaks, and we're going to talk about this with Click here in just a second because I think they're sort of in the same boat. What I think is interesting is it's fascinating to me that we are already at a stage where agentic AI, at least from a market perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is already becoming sort of a table stakes sort of thing where and I think this announcement is a classic example. I don't know that any of this is going to differentiate them in the market. Any of this is really going to set them apart. But if they aren't doing any of this stuff, then they're falling behind.
Right.
And I think it's an interesting situation to be here already.
Yeah, one of the things we're talking about at Informatica is how we thought that having, we're talking, product people, analyst people, and we kind of had agreed that there's going to have to be some consideration of agentic augmentation of your master data management. Like that is going to have to be something you have to write into your RFPs going forward on your plans to be able to support that over the next year because it's just easier to handle that metadata through an automated process. There's just going to be a lot more that is captured that you're humanly not going to capture on a human basis.
The one thing I do think is interesting, and this I'm not picking on Informatica because to a certain extent they're taking the broadest swipe at all of this, but none of the players really are doing a whole lot. And this I'm asking specifically about Informatica because you were there,
Mhm.
because perhaps it's not coming through in the press release, but none of them are really talking about. I mean, about the challenges with the veracity of the agents, right?
Mhm.
So with a lot of use cases, you have the human in the loop and you have the sort of interaction layer where you're sort of less concerned. But with all of these solutions, this is very much in the weeds with the data stuff that often happens. And what triggered this for me is you're talking about master data management, right? This is something that happens often way outside the purview of the users, right? The actual consumers of that data. And so it is really easy to see a scenario in which an agent goes rogue and does a bunch of weird things, and suddenly you've got a bunch of data corruption or data issues. And I'm curious, I'm not hearing a whole lot. I mean, obviously, as a data quality agent, but I'm curious about how we're managing the quality and the veracity of the agents themselves. Did you hear any of that kind of talk about how they were addressing those concerns?
So I think the closest is from Boomi, which is talking about the design of trusted agents. But yes, I agree that I'm not hearing very much about what I would consider to be agent testing, some sort of iterative, probably multi-thousand round test of agents to make sure that you are getting well-governed and accurate and actionable topics and actions that come out of the agent. I am not seeing great testing processes or even uh, goals aspirationally on what you would want to be doing with those models. And I think that's this is a real problem, and it's going to be a challenge going forward. I hear a little bit from, say, Salesforce and ServiceNow, at least giving lip service to the need to test, but even there, I don't see great tools for actually handling the testing at this point. And I think it is a real weakness because we all know that application testing, unit testing are things that you have to do for any sort of services that you put into production. This is not new by any means. Simply because we're calling this an agent does not change the basic
Yeah.
rules of enterprise software and applications.
And the challenges that come with it. And I think the challenge, of course, when we're talking about the data landscape is that it is a big, giant, messy area. And this is where agents have a tremendous amount of promise. In fact, I would probably argue, second to coding, this is the space, if we can nail it, that there's a ton of untapped potential benefit here because it's such a hairy issue. I mean, um,
Mhm.
but the stakes are extremely high about getting it right. And I do feel like, I think the big difference to me, if I look at compare it to coding, is with coding, even if I'm using quote unquote an autonomous agent, generally I have a coder who is a very intelligent set of hands and eyes that is
Mhm.
participating in this development cycle. And I think with data, you may not always have that, and that's where the risk of something going off the rails increases. But